It is Wednesday. It is going live Wednesday. And here we are, a couple minutes late. So I know, like the rest of you, I don't eat lunch at a normal time and I'm scrambling. So hope you are all doing well today. Hope I will catch a few of you here. I know it's hard to catch live when we're actually live. So if I catch you on the replay, make sure to say hello below. This is Christina Springstead, founder of Springstead Solutions, coming at you every Wednesday with a tiny tip or a tactful tip or whatever you want to call it to make your life a little bit easier, to increase your efficiencies in your bookkeeping, which then leads to being permanently profitable because time is money, as we all know. So taking the first quarter of this year to really focus on some bookkeeping things, just things that I've seen over the last quarter and getting people prepped for taxes. Where could they maybe step up their game a little bit, utilize some technology that's out there, and then working with your bookkeeping provider, if you have one, to help you figure out how to best use it, how to best make it the most bang for the buck for you. So one of the things that I put for this week was the mileage tracker, or a mileage tracker. So one thing that most people are looking at is write-offs of their automobiles. So a couple of different ways. People can write off their automobiles in two different ways. And that is something that you need to work with on your tax provider, your CPA, to determine what is best for you. And just keep in mind, whatever determination you make, you can't just change it the next year. So it's really important to talk to your tax provider and get the appropriate information so you start taking deductions accordingly. So there's tracking by miles, which is very common, as you know, especially if maybe you run a business and you have employees who drive their personal car and get reimbursed for mileage, or there's per diem, all that stuff that's out there. And then the other one is they deduct some of their auto payments. So that is not what we're talking about today. If you do that, that's a completely separate thing. But if you are someone who has to track your miles, I am one of them. That process can be daunting. You forget to track it, you forget to log it, you don't know where you started or where you're going, just all the craziness. So in today's world, and the app happy world that we're in, there's lots of different options. And so I just wanted to review a couple for you, some that I personally use. I actually kind of pair some together because sometimes I forget to look at this tracker. I like that. I'm really going through all the things to find out what is the easiest to save me time. So to make sure I have a good record, because whatever you're recording or are deducting in miles, you do need to have a record of that. So one, there's the good old pen and paper. Make yourself a log and you fill it out each, ideally week, because if, unless you're really good with your camera. It's hump day, y'all. Your calendar, unless you're really good with your calendar and you can go back and quickly do it, that's great. But pen and paper, just do a log, where you started, where you ended, how many miles was it driven, make sure to do round trip, who were you seeing and what was the purpose. So you can take a log of all that if you want and do it the good old paper fashion route and turn it into your CPA at the end of the year, total all up for them. They'll like that. Two, handful of apps, so many out there. The one that I feel like has come a long way, and we talked about Snap Receipts last week, is QuickBooks Online. So I've mentioned I'm a QuickBooks Online user. My firm uses it. When it first came out, it was a little clunky because I was used to desktop, but I love it now. There's so many app plugin functionalities, and one of them, it has a mileage tracker. So it stores anytime you're in a car, moving, or it seems like you're moving, riding your bike, whatever, if you're going fast enough and it thinks you're going, it's going to track your trips for you, where you started, where you ended, and it's going to put them all in a nice little queue for you to go in and review at a later time. So it's really pretty handy. You just open up your QuickBooks app, you go to the mileage tracker, and then everything that you've done since last time you were in to review is sitting in there, and you can swipe it for business, you can swipe it for personal, you can put some notes in there, and then at the end of the year, you've just got this handy little log that you can download. It calculates all of the miles for you, and that is built right into the accounting software, so there's no extra expense, right? So one, it's in your accounting software. You already probably have the app, especially if you're starting to use the Snap Receipt, which if anybody has started to utilize that since I last came on, let me know if you love it. But right in the app, already built in, you're paying for it, might as well use it, right? I think that's a great feature and I love it. There is the option if you're a parent and you've downloaded Life 360, that also tracks your trips. And so what you can do is if you go to someplace consistently, you can actually, make a place in there, but that tracks them too, only for 30 days. So if you're going to go back and use a Life 360, which then has to be put into your paper log or into an Excel spreadsheet or some sort of running total, but at least it tracks it for you and you can save your places in there and go back and you can actually see how long you were there too, which is really handy for client meetings. I found that and love it. It helps me with billing. So if you go on site to someone's place and you need to bill for your time, 2 birds, 1 stone, kind of awesome. But it gives you the mileage and you can go from place to place and track it. But again, only for 30 days. I do pay for it. I don't think I'm at the highest level. So maybe the level above me does more. But totally worth checking out because if you're doing that for family safety, again, you're already paying for it. 2 birds, 1 stone, kind of awesome. Other options, there are things out there that are an additional expense, and they usually have a little bit more functionality, not all of them, but Mile IQ is one of them that I used for a long time. It, again, did kind of what QuickBooks did and Life 360 is it knows if it's in your car, it starts tracking where you're going. You can name the places that you're going. It's kind of like a swipe left, swipe right on the app if it's business or work. You can make all the notes that you need to. And you can download that report at the end of a month, at the end of a year, whatever you want to do. Have it handy for your CPA, does all the totaling and tracking for you. Or if you have to submit for reimbursement to maybe your accounting department, maybe you have to submit that to someone else to get paid. Very handy, makes it very easy. And then people can see exactly where you're going. So it's not just verbiage, but they're like, yeah, okay, you left. Did you start from home or did you start from the office? All the good stuff. So that's in there. And then there's a couple other apps, I believe like Expensify does those kind of things. So you can Google. There's just so many options these days. It's a little bit overwhelming trying to keep up with all the technology, but Google. So if you are one who isn't regularly tracking your miles, but it's a deduction for you, it adds up. You want to. And I would highly encourage you to use the apps that you're already paying for so you don't have to pay for one more thing, learn one more thing. Again, QuickBooks Online, it's built right in. And I believe it comes with every subscription level, even self-employed. So that's amazing. So check that out if you haven't yet. Share it with your friends because that is a time saver. It's also a money finder, AKA making you more profitable, right? So I just wanted to come in here with that little tip and trick. And then I did post today or Monday a bookkeeping tip for this week because I got a little off base on my tips, but I wanted to also, since we're talking about mileage, and that's kind of an expense, is also review for you guys this week because I want to stay up on my tips and tricks and going live is kind of moving into business expenses and how you handle that in your accounting software. So there are basically 2 different ways to handle that in your accounting software, and I'm going to cover the 2 most basics. There are bills and there are expenses, and there is a difference. So the difference is bills are going to be things that you pay at a later time. Okay, so if you get something in, you've got to cut a check later or pay it with a credit card, and you've got terms, and you're not paying it on the spot, you want to enter that in as a bill. So and make sure that you're putting in, y'all, every week with my hair, I swear. Make sure you're putting in the due date of your bill because when you get into reports, and we'll talk more about those later, you can run and know exactly what your cash flow is needed to go out the door based on due dates, right? So if you're someone who's just kind of willy-nilly paying your bills and cash flow has been a problem back and forth, we kind of want to rein that in. So if you get a bill and it's due at a later time by paying by check or paying credit card, enter it as a bill into your system and make sure that the due date matches when it's actually due. That way, you know exactly like, hey, when do I need to pay something? And then maybe you get discount terms. So maybe if you're on a, if you pay in 10 days, you get 2% or something. That might be worth looking into. So there's a way in most systems under your terms to identify that as well. Very handy if you're looking for like, hey, cash flow isn't really a problem. And you could increase your profitability just by paying your bills a little bit earlier if cash flow isn't an issue. So make sure to check that out. Expenses are when you're paying for it on the spot. Things that you're paying for with credit cards, things that you wrote a check on the spot, things that maybe you paid for with cash, right? So those are going to go in as an expense to the business. And the reason you don't want to put them in as a bill is because if you're like most people and you use the bank feed and you put it in as a bill, and maybe that bank feed went wonky, which we talked about, right? The bank feed can be great and then it can be really rough. And maybe it doesn't attach to the bill. That bill is still going to show up, although it was already accounted for. So we've talked about this before. You've got double expenses in your system. You don't want that. That's going to mess up your P&L. It's going to distort what you think you owe. Maybe you end up paying the bill twice. I've had that happen a ton of times where we would get payments in from a customer. So someone would show up to pick up their product. They pay for it on spot. They would go back and submit the paperwork to the accounting department, but not really that they paid with credit card. They just submitted the invoice. And then the accounting department would cut us a check. We'd go get the mail and be like, yay, there's checks. And be like, oh, shoot, this was already paid. Have to void it, send it back. It's just a lot of extra time for everybody involved. So you want to keep that really clear. So if you're paying for it on the spot, you want it, one, put into your system so you recognize like, hey, this cash has already gone out the door. This needs to be reflected on my P&L as of right now, especially if you're a cash basis, which most small businesses are cash basis people. So that needs to come off right away. You don't want to be storing receipts in 30 days, running reports, making decisions, and then 30 days later, you're putting in your expenses, realizing, oh gosh, I had $1,000 more out in expenses because I had all these receipts off to the side. So you want to be entering those pretty regularly, depending on when you're looking at your books and making decisions. So again, as the expense, you're going to put it in. So if it was a credit card, you put it in as a credit card expense. Those are usually two different things. And they show up on the liability of it was charged today, and you're going to have to pay that when your bill comes due, right? So you technically paid for it, but now you've got this debt that has to be accounted for later. So that's important. If you wrote a check, that needs to come right out of the bank register, because you don't want to have written a check and then put it in as a bill, right? That doesn't come out of the check register. We need to know like, hey, when we're looking at our bank balance, this money is no longer available. Because if you log into your bank, it's going to show like this $1,000 check that you wrote to someone. They might not do their deposits but once a week or twice a week. You just don't know. So if you're relying on your bank balance to make decisions, and you've got outstanding checks that you haven't put in to the register, right, that you wrote on the spot, that could cause some problems down the road. So again, really important to kind of pay attention to the difference. QuickBooks, they have a help support. Again, I go to QuickBooks. I mostly use online. I also use desktop, but they have a ton of help support that you can go check out. I also have a good friend who does a QBO DIY Academy. So if you are a DIYer and you are really wanting some help from someone who's like specialized in the training and aren't really ready to work with someone one-on-one, her information is on my favorites on my website. So if you go to springsteadsolutions.com, she's there. Definitely check her out. I highly recommend her. I've worked with her personally. I can vouch for her. So if this is all sounding amazing to you and you're like, oh, Christina, okay, I would love to work with you, but I'm not ready to work with someone one-on-one, right? But I really need some help, and I could go to these videos, but it's like foreign language to me. There are solutions out there for you. So again, it's called E-Number Cruncher. She's a QBO DIY Academy, springsteadsolutions.com, my faves. She's in there, highly recommend her. We'll literally walk you through getting you prepped. One, do some bookkeeping cleanup. She helps with that. Office hours and sessions, all kinds of amazing stuff. And she can teach you until you're ready for a bookkeeper. Because let's be honest, if you're going to grow this business, at some point you're giving me or a peer of mine a phone call, because this is going to get out of control and it's not your most thing. So we want to get you familiar with the system, understand kind of how it works. Not that you have to become an expert, but also when you do come around to reaching out to a bookkeeper, you kind of want to know what questions to ask. Have a few questions to ask them. How would they handle something so that you know you're getting a good bookkeeper, which is another thing that we will talk about on a future time. But so that's where I want to come in today, is just these simple tips and tricks. Again, please pass the message. But Get yourself a mileage tracker if you do a lot of driving, or if you're self-employed and have a lot of meetings. Hopefully that'll be a thing in the future again for some of us, right? Like some of us had too many meetings before. Now it's really not. Hopefully we can find the balance. But get yourself a tracker, save yourself a lot of time. Your CPA will love it, rather than you having to guess, right? Guessing is no good when it comes to bookkeeping and accurate records. And then 2, understand the difference between the bill and the expense. And make sure you're entering those pretty regularly so you don't get behind. You don't want to have a stack of bills. You get them today. You don't enter them for 2 weeks. You've got like net 30 days, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, shoot, all these bills are coming up. I don't know how I'm going to pay them. So quick tips and tricks. If you have questions on that, you can drop a comment in the video below. You can also catch me in my Facebook group, Permanently Profitable. Just search for that Facebook group there. Springstead Solutions, you can drop a message down there. I'm on YouTube, trying to get familiar with that. But I would appreciate it if you spread the word. And then also if you watch to the end, if you're a loyal post live follower and watch to the end, gonna do some things. Do you guys prefer when I go live? Because I'm having a feeling that this is kind of a tough time, although I know people go and watch a replay. Or are you guys down with like, hey, just post video whenever and it doesn't have to be live, and we'll drop the questions in the comments when it's convenient for us. So just let me know. I really want to be here and deliver what makes sense. So I've got this weekly live, but would it be better if I just dropped a handful of videos that are pre-recorded throughout the week? What do you think? What's your preference? Let me know below. I wish you all an amazing Wednesday. Get into your books if you haven't. Do a little research, check it out, and look for those apps. And if you need, if you don't have QuickBooks Online and you've been thinking about it, there's a referral link on my faves. It's not really referral, I guess, but it's a discount link for you for 3 months if you want to check it out. So all of these amazing things to help you streamline your business, save your time on compliance so you can get back to running a business that you love. I will see you guys all here next week. Have a great day.